The woman accused of framing her husband's ex-fiancé in a bizarre online stalking scheme pleaded not guilty in court today.
There were mornings when I would wake up and I would think, okay, I'm gonna wake up a second time. This is just a nightmare. And it wasn't.
The story Netflix couldn't fully tell. Netflix A Toxic Love Story tells the unbelievable story of Michelle Hadley being framed for cyberbullying by her ex-fiancé and his new wife. But even after the documentary ends, it leaves out the most disturbing twist of all. According to federal prosecutors, the conspiracy against Michelle didn't begin with the fake emails or the Craigslist ads. It may have started years earlier inside what appeared to be, a normal relationship. By the time the truth finally emerged, Michelle had spent 88 days in jail for crimes she didn't commit. Angela O'Connell had pleaded guilty, and the Deputy U.S. Marshal Ian Diaz, the man sworn to enforce the law, had been sentenced to more than 10 years in federal prison for helping orchestrate the very scheme he claimed to be investigating. The deeper investigators looked, the clearer it became that this wasn't simply a case of cyber stalking. It was a calculated campaign to destroy one woman's life. A relationship built on control. Michelle Hadley met Ian Diaz in 2013, and the relationship progressed quickly. The couple became engaged, purchased a condo together in Anaheim, and appeared to be planning a future. But according to Michelle, life behind closed doors became increasingly controlling. She later alleged that Ian monitored where she went, questioned her daily routines, criticized her appearance, and frequently called whenever she deviated from her normal routine at home. What initially seemed like possessiveness gradually began to feel like constant surveillance. Michelle also claimed Ian pressured her into accepting a marketing position at Disneyland Resort despite the significant pay cut. She later believed he wanted her surrounded by people he knew who could quietly keep tabs on her. Those allegations were never litigated in court, but years later, federal prosecutors would conclude that Ian had participated in a criminal conspiracy against Michelle, giving new context to behavior she had long considered controlling. According to Michelle, one incident changed the relationship forever. In later court filings, she alleged Ian repeatedly pressured her into participating in a sexual encounter with another man while he secretly watched and recorded it. She said the encounter left her feeling violated, and when she begged Ian to destroy the recording, she claimed he refused. These allegations were never a part of Ian's later criminal convictions, but for Michelle, they became another example of someone testing just how much control he could exercise over her life. The motive prosecutors believe started everything. By August 2015, Michelle and Ian's engagement had ended, but one major problem remained: they still jointly owned their Anaheim condo. Even after moving out, Michelle remained financially connected to the property, and resolving ownership became increasingly contentious. Months later, Ian married Angela O'Connell, and while it appeared everyone had moved on, federal prosecutors later argued the dispute over the condo had quietly become one motive behind everything that followed. According to the government's case, Ian and Angela wanted Michelle permanently out of their lives. Prosecutors alleged that destroying her credibility by portraying her as a dangerous cyberstalker would give Ian leverage in an ongoing property dispute while eliminating any sympathy or legal standing Michelle still had. Well, if prosecutors were right, the fake pregnancy, threatening emails, the disturbing Craigslist advertisements weren't isolated acts of revenge. They were all pieces of a much larger plan, designed to ruin Michelle's reputation before she even realized that she was being targeted. Michelle became the perfect suspect. Months before she was arrested, Michelle says she repeatedly warned authorities that someone was creating fake online accounts in her name. Well, according to her later lawsuit, she contacted the police several times and reported her belief that Ian and Angela were attempting to frame her. Those warnings, she said, were never seriously investigated. Then, on June 24, 2016, everything changed. Angela reported that strangers had arrived at her home after responding to a violent Craigslist, fan fantasies advertisements that she claimed Michelle had posted. These were really inappropriate. Police believed her. Well, within hours, Michelle was arrested on suspicion of cyber stalking. Her electronic devices were seized, and she spent the night in jail before posting a $100,000 bail. She believed investigators would have examined her devices, realized she had nothing to do with the messages, and it would quickly clear her name, but instead, Angela claimed that the harassment continued after Michelle's release. Well, according to Michelle's later lawsuit, the accusations should have immediately raised questions because police had already confiscated the devices investigators believed were used to create the emails and advertisements. Yet the investigation continued moving in only one direction. Just weeks later, police discovered another teenager outside Ian and Angela's home after he responded to yet another Craigslist advertisement. Michelle was arrested a second time. Her bail increased to $1 million, and she spent the next 88 days in jail, facing felony charges that carried the possibility of spending the rest of her life behind bars. Now we have the investigation begin to fall apart. While Michelle sat behind bars, investigators continued tracing the digital evidence. According to Michelle's later lawsuit, search warrants obtained by Anaheim police linked one of the Craigslist advertisements to Ian Diaz's personal email account. Additional records allegedly connected many of the threatening emails to the IP address associated with Ian himself. Well, the evidence that should have changed the investigation had existed long before Michelle was finally released. Then, in late 2016, the case took a stunning turn. Ian Diaz contacted investigators and claimed that Angela had fabricated the pregnancy that had become central to the cyber stalking case. At first, Ian appeared to be the whistleblower who had finally exposed the truth, but as federal investigators continued reviewing emails, electronic records, and communications between the couple, well, they reached a very different conclusion. According to the prosecutors, Ian wasn't exposing the conspiracy, he had been helping orchestrate it from the very beginning. Justice finally arrived. Angela Connell eventually pleaded guilty to multiple felony charges connected to the scheme, while Michelle Hadley was fully exonerated. After spending nearly 3 months in jail for crimes she never committed, federal prosecutors continued pursuing Ian Diaz, charging him with conspiracy to commit cyberstalking itself, perjury, and obstruction of justice. In 2023, a federal jury found him guilty, and he was sentenced to 10 years and 1 month in federal prison. What began as a failed engagement ultimately became one of the most extraordinary wrongful cyberstalking cases in recent American history. Michelle Hadley lost 88 days of her freedom because prosecutors trusted the wrong people, while the man tasked with enforcing the law was ultimately convicted of helping manufacture the very crimes he blamed on someone else. It's a case that demonstrates how manipulation, digital evidence, and misplaced trust can combine to create a nightmare that almost no one believed was possible until it happened.